Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Chris from AppSumo, and today I am really, really excited to be joined with Akira The Don. For those of you who don't know Akira, let me give you a quick bit of his bio. So, Akira The Don is a globally renowned artist and DJ and creator of the Meaningwave Universe. Meaningwave is an ongoing musical epic story in psychotechnology developed by Akira with the aim of helping listeners achieve their potential in this lifetime. Akira, thank you so much for hopping on.
Good to be here, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So I guess where did Meaningwave come from? You've been doing it for like when would you say you initially developed it?
It's like looking back over my life, I've been working on it as long as I can remember, weirdly. But in its kind of conscious form, deliberately, with a name, all that type of thing, it's been 2.5, 3 years.
Okay.
Like
And I
that.
guess backing up, how would you describe Meaningwave? I know we musical epic story, psychotechnology. What does that mean for somebody who might not be familiar with that?
Well, the basic would be, when I quit school when I was 16. The last exams I did, the only revision I did was I read my notes over ambient music.
Hmm.
And I played them as I went to sleep. And they would sink into my brain while I was asleep. And I did very well in my exams. I guess that was the first Meaningwave I did. Actually, it wasn't because I did stuff before. Anyway, the basic of it is essentially taking speech and turning it into songs. Or taking speech or taking the written word. I recently, for example, translated Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, Volume 1, the first two books, into a kind of like turbo pop album. Didn't change any of the words, didn't to try and make it rhyme or anything like that. You find in most speech or words there's an inherent rhythm and melody that can be kind of isolated if you look hard enough. You know, anything you say has melody in it. So basically, I'm taking spoken word and turning it into music. And the point being, like, maybe you could have a podcast, you could listen to it once or twice, and that would be that. But you could take the most powerful bits of a podcast and turn that into an album, and you could listen to that thousands and thousands of times for the rest of your life. And you could really then integrate the wisdom or the ideas or the messaging or whatever it was that was in there. So that's part of it. And the other part is, what was that? Because I just did an album with Scott Adams, and it was a kind of interesting full circle because I read his book, How to Lose at Everything and Still Win Big, I think it was called, about 4 years ago. And it had a section in it about affirmations, which is the idea of kind of like taking something and drilling it into your subconscious so that your subconscious will then work on it. Since most of your life is kind of not so much controlled, I would say, but it's kind of enacted by the subconscious. Subconscious is doing things while you're asleep. Subconscious is doing stuff while you're awake. I read a book called, what is it, Thinking Fast and Slow, that describes
Daniel Kahneman.
System 1 and 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
System 1, which you could think of as partly the subconscious, is doing most of the stuff. And the way you react to things and decisions you make and stuff that you think is very conscious, most of it actually isn't. So affirmations is a way of programming the subconscious. I used to mess with chaos magic for the same reason. Chaos magic, well, it's what it sounds like, really. It's a form of magic, like very, very old and ancient, to do with partly to do with programming. It's to do with like creating your reality, or changing reality, or dictating the way the world goes. A lot of it is now advertising techniques. What used to be known as in the old world as magic, if you read old ass books on magic from like hundreds of years ago, a lot of that's now marketing. And one aspect of chaos magic, and I got this from a comic book writer called Grant Morrison. They have a thing which is sigils, which is kind of like logos. So you take an idea and you turn it into a logo, essentially. So say you had an idea, say you wanted to wake up at 7 a.m. every morning. So you'd write down, it is my desire to wake up at 7 a.m. every morning. Then you'd remove every repeating letter. And, or the A's, the E's, the I's, the O's, all that, right? And what you have left, you kind of squash it into a glyph and wiggle it around until it looked like a cool little logo. And then you meditate on it, or you set it on fire, or you put it in a box, or you stick it to the forehead of your lover while you're making love, or whatever it is you do, or you look at it while you're dancing or some stuff. The idea is to burn that desire into your subconscious. It's the same thing. I was like, oh, okay, so these affirmations, kind of more perhaps slightly new agey guys, are talking about the same thing as the chaos magician guys, and so on and so forth. The idea being to program your subconscious. And I was like, well, I make music, and music's really sticky. And I already know that from doing that stuff with my exams when I was a kid, that you can like burn stuff into you. So like, what if I took the affirmation stuff or the chaos magic stuff, the desires, the wanting, the ways I wanted to change myself or change my surroundings or whatever, and embedded those in music, then maybe they would become powerful and sticky. And so I did that, and it worked. And then I combined that with the integrating the wisdom of the ages and integrating like powerful wisdoms from other people that I wanted to integrate. I was thinking of it like in the Matrix when Neo does that clamp onto the head thing and goes, I know Kung Fu. I could take a complicated idea and turn it into an album, and then you could just listen to the album aloud while you're jogging or in the gym or whatever it is, and you wouldn't be able to not integrate that knowledge, and then you would know it. And then I was like, what if I kind of essentially curated a thing where each idea was building on the last, so I could build towards really quite like epic and complicated and powerful ideas in a sort of foundational stepping stone sort of a fashion, with each record building upon the previous. So then if you were to listen to all the records in sequence, you would essentially develop kind of like epic superpowers in a very short amount of time. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's exactly how it's felt as a listener. You've had a lot of people on that. So some of the ones that I've really liked: Naval Ravikant, David Goggins, Jordan Peterson, Gary V's, Jocko Willings. All of those ones where, you know, I've probably listened to hundreds of hours from them. But when you're trying to actually nail down, like, okay, what is the core message that they're talking about when it comes to responsibility or discipline or working out or pushing through obstacles, and you can't quite articulate it. And then when I came across your work, and I'm the type of person, when I get an album, I just listen to the whole album on repeat. I don't like listening to things on shuffle or listening to different people. I like one on repeat. And so there have been weeks where I've just listened to the same one of your album in my car or on my AirPods. And then I just get that. I'll find when I'm in conversation, I can really just recall exactly what that core message is in, you know, a 3-5 minute thing. Or I'll send a song to somebody where I'm like, hey, this is the point I was trying to explain. Let me share that to you, because you don't have to listen to this 2-hour long episode on Rogan. You can listen to this 5-minute distillation that you really nailed down the essence of what they're talking about. So this kind of started, as you're saying, it started to fulfill the need for you, or the desire for you, where you're like, I want to integrate this stuff into my life. And then that's where it kind of picked up.
Yeah, I was working out ways of doing that. It was a couple of things. I was making rap albums, and I always had this planned trilogy, and I made the first one, and the first one was about being the individual and the importance of the individual, the right of the individual to be the individual, sort of contrasted with being a small person being born into the world type thing. So that's like part one of the human story. I'm here and I'm an individual. And then the second one was about that kind of integration with the rest of the world. You realize you're a part of everything. You start to see yourself in terms of other people and all that type of thing. And then the third one, I was about to make it, and then I was like, shit. I'm not wise enough to make this record yet. I haven't had a experience. I got up to I could do the kid one. I could do the sort of early 20s one, but I couldn't do the next one. You know, I wasn't a father at that point. I knew that there was a lot of stuff that I just wasn't, you know, smart enough to elocute, to express correctly. You know, so I was like, all right, I'll stop rapping for the time being, and I'll just focus on making the music, and I'll go off and like have a kid and move country and go and have some adventures, and then hopefully I'll get the wisdom I need. And then I'm making all this instrumental music, so I'm like wanting to sample bits of spoken word for it, which I'd always done. I always made these mixtapes, and one track would be me rapping, and then the next track could like be me sampling Jack Kirby talking about conduiting like the Bible to create Galactus for 3 minutes or something. So I always made those sorts of songs. Just wasn't as deliberate. But anyway, one week I made 3 tracks and put them out on my YouTube or whatever, SoundCloud or that. And one of them sampled a bit from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. It was like a lo-fi beat and a bit of that. All you had to do was follow the damn train, CJ, type vibe. And then another one sampled a Welsh lady talking about the concept of hiraeth, which is like a specific Welsh word meaning a kind of nostalgic longing for a place that used to be that doesn't exist anymore. Like a very kind of lo-fi hip-hop subject. And then the other one, I sampled Jordan B. Peterson talking about being a good plumber. So I got back in from DJing one night. I used to DJ in clubs in West Hollywood in the long ago, before the Tom Hanks disease, you know. And I'd get back in, and I'd be at 3, 4 in the morning. My brain would be all crazy from DJing to all these lunatics in West Hollywood. So I would usually sort of switch on YouTube and sort of decompress. And Jordan Peterson comes up, and he's talking about responsibility, and he's talking about the importance of hierarchies of competence. And he says, you know, be a plumber, be a good one. And I was like, shit, always been saying this. I remember I was interviewed some years when I got my first record deal, and I was saying, look, I'm like, they were like, oh, how's it feel to be so amazing or something? I was like, look, what I'm doing is no more important than like being a really good road sweeper. If you're a road sweeper and you're doing a really, really good job, then that's an important thing, and you should be treated with respect or whatever. And Peterson was talking about being a plumber, and I was like, oh God, I want to sample that. Anyway, so I put those 3 records out that week, and the Peterson one was doing really well, did really well. It did like 14,000 streams in a day or something. And I was listening to James Altucher on a podcast, and James Altucher said, quadruple down on what's working. So that's my big advice for you today. Look around, look in your life, look at what's working, and quadruple down on that. I said, oh, well, that thing's working, so I'll just quadruple down on that. And then I made a whole Peterson mixtape, and then just went, and then Meaningwave was sort of named, and then I just went on all in on that. And that was that. And then it came full circle on Friday, because I released the Scott Adams album, finally. Scott Adams being half of the inspiration, and then James Altucher being the other. And on that very day, James Altucher sent me a message, and we had a chat on DM, and I'm going to do a James Altucher record. That was a very interesting sort of completion of an arc.
Yeah. Well, to continue that completion, I saw that Jordan Peterson just released his first interview in a long time today on Michaela's podcast. So
just listening.
Looking forward to how is it?
You know, he was, I mean, I've been saying about this. One aspect of it is like she went into the belly of the whale and rescued her father. Is one aspect of the mythological, the mythopoetic nature of the story, because it all is. You know, this is a guy who's been talking in terms of stories and mythopoetic stories and archetypal stories for 40 years. One of the reasons I did so much stuff with him, it was like, he was talking about stuff I was very interested in. And it's like, well, I could rap about this stuff, or I could sample a guy who's been thinking about this shit for 40 years. You know? And, you know, you manifest. Grant Morrison, who I mentioned earlier, who introduced me to the concept of chaos magic, he was very deliberate in his creations, and he wrote a comic book called The Invisibles, and he essentially put himself, a character kind of like that looked like him, and essentially was an avatar for him as the main character. And he got into all sorts of adventures, and all these cool things happened. Became very successful, and the character kind of was mirroring his life, to the point that he wrote the character into a situation where the character got some kind of flesh-eating disease. And 3 months after writing that, as the comic book appeared on shelves, Grant Morrison himself got the exact same thing. It was in hospital, suffering from the same thing. So when he realized what was going on, he just started writing himself into orgies and things, his character, and that's what happened in his life, and he kind of sort of saved himself. But you got to be careful. Like when you go deep into this stuff, all these things start manifesting in your own life. I see it happen in my life when I was making the Goggins album. He's just talking about pain and suffering all the time. I got hit by 2 cars. You know, I got hit by a car twice during the 4 weeks of making that record. I had all sorts of ridiculous like accidents and injuries and things. Like I came off my scooter. I like nearly got killed. Like it was ridiculous. you know, and Jordan B. Peterson's been talking a lot about, you know, very high levels of suffering and psychological anguish and torture and all these sorts of things that he's then basically had to go through on multiple levels of reality. You know, and when you listen to the podcast, it's quite astounding how sort of deep into the belly of the proverbial whale he's been. But sometimes that's necessary, and now he's been through that, and now he can come out and he can really talk about a lot of the stuff that he was already talking about, but he can now talk about it with complete personal experience and knowledge of what that really is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it reminds me of a Marcus Aurelius quote where he says the mind takes on the color of your thoughts. And so if you're constantly thinking these things, how much of that are you manifesting into your, I have Marcus sitting over my shoulder right there.
There he is on my shirt.
Oh, what do you attribute that to? Because I know there's just the idea that you're, what is it, the secret that you're just manifesting it? How do you think of that?
Life works from the inside out is the number one rule. You know, as above, so below, as without, so within, as within, so without, all that. You know, it depends. I mean, there's so many like levels of looking at it. If you let's say, for example, the Alan Watts kind of idea of every one of us is an aperture through which the whole cosmos looks out, right? You know, so everybody is God. And if you think about the Bible as an instruction manual, if you think when you're reading the Bible, when you see the words God or Jesus, you replace that with I. You can see the Bible as an instruction manual for authoring reality. So that's one way of looking at it. So if that is the case, and the Bible is an instruction manual for authoring reality, and all of us are the creator, all of us are that manifestation. What's the words thing? You know, I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted to. The idea of God playing hide and seek with himself. You'd get so bored of being God, being able to do anything at all. You'd create these ever increasingly elaborate games. And the ultimate game and the ultimate trap would be creating yourself as something that didn't know it was God. And then you'd have to work your way out of that. You'd have to Houdini your way out of that box, right? And so if that was the case, and you were that powerful, then therefore, you know, putting yourself into these places, these mental places, say you're Peterson and you're really trying to think, you're trying to work out how human beings managed to manifest so much fucking hell on earth in the 20th century. And you go really deep into that, and you really go deep into those horrible places. It's unsurprising when then that such things start manifesting in your life. If that's the case, if everybody is God, if we are all the authors of the world, how could it be otherwise?
I can, another thing that's interesting about just you putting this in musical form is as you're saying that, I can remember where I was when I was listening to that album. I was in Costa Rica this past December before everything went crazy. And I remember I was in the hotel room listening to that I wonder. And yeah, it sticks in your brain in a way that just remembering it from a podcast interview or a lecture just would not have that ability to, I guess, bypass your consciousness and really embed itself in you.
Well, it activates both sides of your brain, right? So it activates the left and the right brain. Like the music activates one, and the talking and the thinking activates the other. If it's just music and just completely sort of singy la la la, it will just be one side of the brain. So pushing these things together, and I didn't think about this before, but this is something people have been pointing out to me. I go, oh yeah. So you're activating both sides, so it's way more powerful. But music anyway, and I've been saying that, talking about this for a while, you can use music as a time travel device. You know, in the same, like, two things can transport you back to any point in your life, and they are smell and music, right? You ever get that thing where you're walking through a crowded place and someone's got some cologne that reminds you of your fucking dad when you were 6 or some shit, or like a girl you used to go out with or something? You know what I mean? It's plunge you back into that place really vividly, and music can do that. I always say to people, it's very important to keep listening to new music. Always keep listening to new music for multiple reasons. One, it keeps you in touch with the world. You know, if you stop listening to new music, that severs one connection with the new world, with the existing world, with the young world. It's like you're adrift, and the further away you know, if you just stop listening to new music, you're kind of just drifting away, watching the world get further and further away from you, and you don't really understand it in the same way. You know, music is a very important part. It's you know, take the music away from a movie, what the fuck have you got? You know what I mean? It's like the music's at least 50% of it, like at least. And music is the thing I noticed. If you look at the top comment on a music video, any music video that's like more than 4 years old, top comment is always, music in my day was so much better. This is real music. I remember 10 years ago, Little B was coming out, and real hip hop heads thought Little B was trash. And you'd look at a Biggie video or something, it'd be like, this was the real music. You look at a Little B video today, it's got the same comment. Little B, this is the real music. People always think that the real music happened to coincide with the period when they were first like getting their first snog around the back of the bike sheds or whatever, when they were first like smooching someone at the school disco. So that's when they were first really listening to music, and they were forging these neural pathways with this music and to these important moments of their life, these formative, beautiful moments. So they associate the best music of all time with those feelings. And also most of them stop listening to music after that. You get busy, you stop listening to music with the same fervor that you do when you're 14. That's why being a DJ is a useful profession, because it forces you to listen to music in the same way you did when you were 14. Now, if you keep listening to music and you keep listening to new music, anytime you want to go back in time, you just play the music from that time. So like when I was making the Marcus Aurelius album, there was a certain vibe I was in 2005. I had my first apartment that was all on my own. I wasn't sharing with anyone. And I was first producing my first full-blown songs, and they were all amazing. Sometimes your first music is your best because you don't know what you're doing. You're excited. You don't have the sort of talent that will lead you to do things in a proper way. You're not orthodox, you know? So I put on a record that would transport me back to that time very explicitly, so I could then bring those feelings back into the present and imbue the Marcus Aurelius album with them. And I was like, what was I listening to then? I was like, it was MF. I tried this MF Doom record, and sure enough, you could close your eyes and like you feel it in your belly. You can look around, you can see the surroundings in the room you were in, all that, you know, and then you can pick up those vibes, those feelings, that mindset you were in, that version of yourself, and bring that back to the present. You can do that with music, and anyone could do that so long as you keep listening to new music and you keep carving fresh pathways. So you'll be able to, you know, when you're an old man, you'll be able to revisit any previous incarnation of yourself. You know, that Elon Musk talked about this as something that they're trying to do with Neuralink. Like you could basically boot up you 1993 or something, you know? You could boot up that you of that day and then have a conversation with that you and get something from that. You can do that now with music.
What's interesting with that is, and I think this is one of the things that Jordan Peterson talks about, is how music is that the initial way that something is expressed is typically through like art or poetry, because it's not yet on a conscious level, but it's bubbling up. It's kind of like a bottom up thing where before it can be expressed in a book or something like that, it typically comes out, this concept comes out in art. So like you're saying, by keeping connected with what's going on, what the new music that's coming out is, you're seeing what these kind of concepts are, what people are thinking about before it's ever really fully articulated.
Yeah, the time travel thing works in both ways. My current developing thesis is that the subconscious does not experience time in the same beads on a string way that the conscious does. One thing that happened to me recently was when making the Scott Adams album. I have like, you know, a planned out schedule of records I'm making. I'm like, right, I'm doing this one this month, next month I'm doing this, next month I'm doing that. About a month ago, I don't know why, I sort of stopped what I was doing and started making just some beats. And I spent like 2 days in almost a weird daze, because I'll do this. I've been doing this hyper productivity experiment for like 2.5 years now.
That's something I want to go deeper in.
Yeah. So I got myself into the zone about 2.5 years ago, and I just haven't left. So sometimes, I'll take synchronicities as signposts, and if I have some crazy synchronicities, I'll just go, okay, I'll just follow that, and I won't really think about it. So I spent 2 days just making some beats for no reason. It wasn't on my list of things to do. They're with this very specific sound. They all fit together really nicely. And then I went to bed, and my phone auto played the new Scott Adams podcast, in which he explained the user interface for reality. And he's like, okay, I'm going to do this now. I've been wanting to do this for 20 years. I can finally do it today. and it was just like a 40-minute podcast breaking down, as he sees it, the user interface for reality. And I was like, holy shit, this needs to be an album. I need to turn this into an album. And it just so happened that all that music I just made for the past 2 days fit perfectly to the point that when sequenced in an order of having made them, the first one is a perfect intro, and the first one was in the exact same key and tempo as the pom 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 that he did at the beginning of his podcast. So when I said, okay, I'll come up here and I'll just play it over these beats, see what it sounds like. It's in the exact same key and tempo. Pom 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 pom, pom 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 pom. Exactly. I didn't tune it, nothing. His voice remained in key for the entire album. The thing fit perfectly. So my subconscious that had me make those beats knew that I was going to need to do that album in a couple of days. You know? And that's just a very, very, very little bubble of it. But like, you know, do you know, you aware of Cliff High's work?
No.
He basically kind of came up with a software that basically scrubbed the internet for keywords and used it as a way of predicting the future and investing in the stock market and predicting sort of global events like 9/11 and
Okay, I think maybe they talk about that in Freakonomics. That sounds familiar, but
he basically just, because he'd scraped the internet, all chat forums for words, and most people, you know, there's God, how many words are there? There's
a lot.
But most people only use like 2% of the words. On a day-to-day basis, the words you're using a fraction of the available language. So you can tell when certain people start using unorthodox words, you'll be able to tell that in the software. And those words tend to basically essentially predict the future. It's like everyone's a bit psychic. It's like, you know, and you have to be, I guess, because the tribe would kind of get a funny feeling if they're about to be invaded. You're walking down the street, you know if someone's looking at you from a building above. Your just eyes will look up, you'll meet theirs, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's got that. And that seems to express itself through language, particularly used in creative endeavors. So Cliff High was able to accurately predict the future for years and years and years, very specifically down to like months. He made a lot of money on Bitcoin doing it, you know. And then it stopped working in 2013, 2014. It stopped working as accurately when everyone started self-censoring their speech, and the whole sort of recent sort of politically correct clampdown began, and people stopped expressing themselves accurately, truly. So then the accuracy of that went down.
Was there something in particular in 2013 that happened, or that's just when it started to slowly go down?
Well, it was after, if you recall, it was 2013, 2014, that this recent wave of sort of political correctness and self-censorship and all that sort of stuff started kicking in. So, and the social networks started clamping down on people and kicking people off for speech they disagreed with, and things of that nature. And that all started happening around the end of 2013, 2014. Yeah.
Have you been noticing that in music as well, or does music kind of get a pass on some of that?
Oh God, no. If you look at, say, rap music, the things people were saying in rap music in 2013 versus now, you know, the biggest rap star at the time, Rick Ross, was like rapping happily about like spiking girls' drinks like 7-8 years ago. You can't do that now. This is the stuff that Biggie was saying in 1994 or whatever. You can't say none of that now. The stuff that A$AP Rocky was saying in 2012, you can't say, like, and rap supposedly, that's the rebellious one. That's the one that's like, doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks, you know, and can say whatever it wants for good or ill. Not the case now, you know what I mean? And as far as like music is concerned, you know, consensus within the creative industries is such now that there is only one allowed school of thought, frame of reference thing you can talk about, which leaves out a massive part of existence that is no longer expressed in music or art or even like movies or plays or anything, which is another reason why it's necessary for me to do what I'm doing, because it's this huge swathe of the human experience is just left out of music. Music primarily concerns itself with the experience of the teenager for the most part. But, you know, even up until recently, like other subjects were explored within music, and they're really not now, you know.
Is a lot of that coming from the record companies versus like independent artists? Do they have a different go at it? Like how do you have things set up on your end?
How do you mean?
Like, are you doing it fully independently? Are you working with a, yeah?
Independently. Yeah, fully independent. There's no reason not to anymore. I mean, and I knew this a long time ago. I wrote an article for a magazine back in 2004 explaining why you didn't need a record label anymore and why they were stupid. It was essentially just like a bank loan with loads of advisors telling you how to spend your money and then stealing it off you, you know, and then sort of charging you interest twice. And then 6 months later, I went to America and signed a deal with Interscope. You know, YOLO.
So what happened there?
I sort of manifested a record deal. Yeah. I was looking at the NME and it was like this band, The Strokes, would come to the UK and we're doing really well. I was like, huh, I bet me as a British rapper, if I went to America, everyone would think I was really unique and cool. Here in Britain, they just think I'm just, you know, whatever. So I went to America and yeah, within a couple of weeks of being there, I somehow ended up being flown out to LA to meet Jimmy Iovine and being told that I was going to do for rap music what the Beatles did to rock music, which turned out to be true, you know, in the long term. Yeah, but anyway, and then that sort of like was a disaster ultimately, as I knew it would be, as I predicted it would be, and I did, you know, I did some self-sabotage in retrospect to ensure the outcome of me being forced to be completely independent, so that I could get to this point of my life and do this thing in a completely independent fashion, because there is no fucking way any record label on earth would allow you to sample Jordan Peterson and release it. Like literally any. And this is just a goddamn like clinical psychologist lecturing. You know what I mean? Like we're at that point in the culture where like someone telling you to be disciplined and clean your room is considered incredibly problematic and controversial. And no record label on earth would want to be associated with that. No record label on earth would want to be associated with stoicism, which is considered to be a gateway to the evil or this or the other. Like with straight faces, people write articles for major publications saying that stoicism is a dangerous pathway to radicalism and so
Oh,
on.
I haven't heard any of this. Really?
But if you Google it, you'd find it. Or if you were to read those
Yeah.
publications, you would see it. You know,
Stoicism, eh?
discipline. The very word discipline is a trigger word. That apparently means something entirely different and is very evil. So yeah, I'm completely independent, and I have to be. I wouldn't be allowed to exist otherwise.
Well, is it because, so I guess if you're working with a record label, you're accountable to the record label versus the audience, versus when you're just funded by your audience directly and there's no middleman, you're basically just accountable to them and doing things that if they hit and they resonate, they work, otherwise they don't, versus going through a middleman. Is that kind of where the differentiation is?
Yeah, but there's lots. You know, a record label, yeah, you know, they have final say on what songs go on the record, how often you can put a record out, and how the record is marketed, all that type of thing. You know, I release 2 albums a month. You know, I release music every week. This is not a way that the traditional record label likes. What the traditional record industry likes to do is put an album out, then tour it for 2 years, and then put out another one, and then milk that one to death. You know, it's just completely different thing. I don't have anything to do with the traditional music industry. I had to invent my own one, like completely separate, that works in a mostly different fashion. And you know, I have distribution. I distribute to music streaming platforms, which record labels do. But you don't need a record label to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what you need a record label for is to pay radio stations to play your songs and do all that shenanigans business, and pay Billboard to have you chart, which literally happens. 6ix9ine, Tekashi 6ix9ine, got released from prison recently and then just like broke all this stuff down and was like, right, this is how you get a hit, and this is how much you pay Billboard to get this chart position, and this is da 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 da, and everyone got mad at him, and he's very funny. God bless that boy. Bless that little monster.
So, okay, can you talk a bit about your zone of hyper productivity and how that came about? Because I think a lot of people, when they think about creatives or call themselves creatives, they disdain wanting to have a schedule and having a task list and want to wait for inspiration to strike. So, what is it? What is it for you? What does that process look like? Why did you decide to do this? And how have you made that? I'm throwing a lot of questions at you. How is that sustainable so long? But you got it.
No, it's one of these lies that I was saying yesterday. In this day and age, if I was hiring and you came to me and you had a degree, that'd be like a red flag. Like the state of miseducation in universities and stuff is such currently, certainly in anything vaguely creative, that yeah, that would be like a big red flag to not hire you. They teach such stupid stuff. At art school, they'll be teaching you that all this, yeah, exactly, that money is evil, and they don't teach you anything about business, and you shouldn't be disciplined and just follow your muse or whatever kind of nonsense.
Well, I think in your Gary Vee album, one of the things he says is like, if you go to school for marketing, you want to know what they're teaching? Print advertising. And it's just nobody's doing that anymore. You're just so far behind the eight ball. People who were successful in the 80s are now teaching.
You're far behind. You're being ideologically programmed into nonsense. It's like whatever. It's so many levels of foolery when you could just be like doing it. Like on the job experience is the best experience in anything, particularly creative stuff. But one of the big lies they tell that's propagated about creativity is this whole, yeah, you got to wait for the right muse. You got to be inspired, this, that, or the other. Like it's bullshit. That shit, you can turn that stuff on. Like if you've ever been in the zone, that's a place that exists where everything else kind of melts away and everything you do just works and it's just beautiful and it's sort of magical. And maybe it's not even you. Maybe you've just become a conduit for something else. You've kind of opened yourself up to what Alan Moore called idea space, or what some people call the fifth dimension, or what some people call God, or whatever it is, right? It's just flowing. But you can be there all the time. You can switch that on. You can train yourself through discipline and consistency to just be there all the time. I noticed the thing. I used to be a music journalist before I made music. Well, before I was professionally making music, I became a music journalist so that I knew the music industry and I could kind of cheat my way. I could fast track my way to being able to do stuff. Back in the day, you used to have to send a demo tape to a record label, or you had to be related to someone at a record label to get your record out, right? So, and one thing I noticed as a music journalist reviewing lots of records was most bands' first albums were awesome and their second ones sucked. And I thought, why is this? And then I realized after talking to a bunch of them, what happened was you're in a band, you're doing it every day, you're practicing in the garage with your homies, you're writing songs every day, you become in the zone of being in the band. And then you get signed, you put your album out, and then the record label sends you on tour for 2 years. And then you come back 2 years later and try and make your second album, and you don't know what, you've forgotten how. You're way away from that zone, and you don't know how to get back in that zone. All those habits and triggers that you had that put you in that place the first time, they're all gone. So lots of bands can never get back in that zone, and they never get back there. They're always trying to get back to the space they were in the first album, and they can't do it. I had friends at a band called The Darkness, and I watched it happen to them specifically. And they just fell apart and split after that second album. They just couldn't. They're back together again now, and they finally found their way home. But so I was like, well, this Meaningwave thing is doing real great, and I've been in the zone a couple of times like here, and I was flowed. I did the JBP Wave mixtape, and I did the whole thing in like a day or something. It was quite magical. So I was like, well, what if I just got into the zone and didn't leave? What if I structured my life in such a fashion that I could get into that place, that magical area of flowing creativity, and then just stay there, So I did. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And everything I have done since has been great. I haven't had a single second of writer's block, beat block. I have no wasted tracks. Every single track I have made has come out. But people are like, how do you produce so much stuff, Akira? Most people do lots of stuff, but most of it sucks. Or is, not, it doesn't come out the way they want. Now I'm at the point where literally it will come out exactly as I envisage it. You know, I'll hear a bit of audio and I'll be like, this is what the music needs to sound like, da 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 da, da, and then I'll do it and it does. You know, and that's been going on for 2.5 years now. And as far as how it works, you know, it's consistency and discipline are the major foundations of it. So whatever it is you're trying to do, you got to be doing it all the time. I mean, obviously, you know, so you just have to have that consistency and discipline to say, in my case, just be making music all the time and always be trusting your instinct and not questioning or overthinking anything. You've got to be keeping in that flow. Any obstacles, whether it's mental obstacles or physical obstacles, like your technology not working or you being hungry or being tired or whatever it is, anything like that will get in the way of that. So you have to keep all of that stuff regulated correctly, you know. So you need to let's see. Okay, so diet, I removed any kind of foods that in any way affected me negatively. So I just have, personally, I just eat meat, and that just keeps me very consistent. So I just drink water and eat meat. So it used to be back in the day, you know, I'd eat pasta, then you feel sleepy for a couple of hours. And then, oh, what am I eating later? Oh, I don't eat. It's like now it's just so consistent. I know exactly what I'm eating at all times. So that has removed a whole area from my life that could have caused friction. Because friction is what will get you out of the zone or get in the way of you being in the zone. Any kind of friction in your life. Technological.
What has that been like doing the all meat? I did that for about 40 days and then hit quarantine and adjusted it. But yeah, felt probably the best I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I started at the same time I started the hyper productivity thing and the zone thing. I started that at the same time. So that's been like 2 years and 5 months or something. It's
Wow.
very normal now. It's great. Just in the, you know, I used to have all sorts of diet related issues and now I have zero. So just that area of my life is completely sort of stress free.
So what do you typically have? Like what is each meal and the timing of it?
For most of the time, it was just steak. Currently, since Tom Hanks' disease, I've been back in the crib, and my wife is like very lovely. So she's like, "You need some different stuff." So she brings me like bacon and eggs usually around now. But it's like, yeah, bacon, eggs, steak.
Do you do spices or sauces or anything like that, or just salt?
Most of it was just salt.
Mhm.
Over the past 6 months, I've been putting sriracha on my
Getting crazy.
crazy baby. You know, sriracha,
Yeah.
pretty epic. Uh, yeah, but you know, so just simplify everywhere. You know, regulate everywhere, discipline everywhere. My most recent thing, which it was the last thing that I needed to do, and Tom Hanks and the Communist Chinese sorted that out for me. So shout out to them. I used to, you know, I was a DJ in the old world of the long ago of February 2020. So I'd have to go out, you know, and I'd get in at 3, 4 in the morning. So it's impossible to get up super early, you know, and have a regulated sleeping pattern. My sleeping was all over the place. I basically go to bed like 5 or 6 and, you know, get up at like 10, 11, 12 or something. And I'm completely off kilter with my family, this, that, and the other. But now I was like, right, this is an opportunity to get up early. Just completely switch my sleeping patterns around. My whole life, I've been like, stay up till 5, 6 in the morning guy. Even when I was a little kid, like my parents would put me to bed, then I'd like hide under the duvet reading a book till like 5, 6 in the morning. And then I'd always be really tired at school, you know? Anyway, I took this as an opportunity to implement that final bit of necessarily regulative discipline. And so I created, I said, all right, you have to have a reason to do things. I've always known this. You know, the only reason my first rap band ever got out of the basement was that I just booked as a gig and didn't tell the other guys. Because they were always like, oh, we're not ready. So I just booked as a gig. And I was like, right, we're going to do a gig next Tuesday and there's no getting out of it. And there's a preview in this music magazine that I wrangled. So we've got to do it. You just have to force yourself via setting targets that you have to achieve, right? So I created a morning show. So I do a morning show on Twitch every day at 7 a.m. So I have to get up. So I have to get up at 6, you know. I just have to. And it's every day. It's not just like Monday to Friday. It's every day. And I have to do it. And so now I've been getting up every morning at 6 for over a month now. So now I've sorted that aspect out. So now I go to bed the same time. I get up the same time. Eat the same thing. Work on the music stuff every day. You know, all that type of thing. So that keeps you in that space. Batching is a big aspect of it. You on that one?
Mm-hmm. But
Concepts.
please.
Batching is basically just like grouping things together. So you wouldn't just like wash one black sock on a Monday and then do some more socks on Thursday, maybe 3 more. You know what I mean? You do them all together on Sunday. You put all the black socks together. You do all the goddamn black socks. So and that puts you in the zone of doing the socks. You got your little sock zone, and you have your little routines around it, and you just get more and more efficient at it. And you fold the bag in a certain way, you drop it in. You know exactly what you're doing. Get that sock washing thing down, baby. You know what I mean? You're the king of that sock washing thing. So you just want to apply that to everything. Batch everything. And the more you can batch, the more, because you put everything into a mini zone inside the bigger zone. You know what I mean? So in my case, like, I release 2 albums a month. One's a vocal, one's instrumental version. So say I'm making 1 album a month, right? So I split it into processes. So I'm like, for each album, I'm going to be like building drum kits and creating the sound and all that type of shit. So I'll like do all that together. One day I'm just going to be building drum kits. So I get in my drum kit zone and I just get real good at building those drum kits, and it's all magical and flowy. I'm not like, for each song, now I've got to build a new drum kit and da-da-da. So it's, I'll create a template so that when I hit in there and I'm like making that music, everything's there for me. There's no friction, I'll be going through I'll be like researching the words I'm going to use, do all that at the same time. So I get deep into that zone, deep into that person's mindset, whatever it is. So it's like everything, like just down to goddamn thumbnails for videos and stuff. I'll do all those, at the same time, and it'll take an hour rather than like 15 minutes a day over 7 days. It just speeds everything up. So that's why it's like hyper productivity / zone inhabitation, because they go together. The more efficient you can become, the more areas of your life you can find areas where you're wasting time or being inefficient. The more of that you can clean up, and the more you can constantly recalibrate everything, just the less friction there is, so the deeper in the zone you can be. And you can think of the zone a bit like the moment, right? People always say live in the moment. It's kind of the same thing. And the deeper into the moment you are, the happier you are. And the less anxiety, the less fear, the less worries, the more magical everything becomes. The same with the zone. The deeper in the zone you are, the more powerful you become in whatever it is you're doing. The more the unnecessary sort of like fades away, the more distractions, they're further away from you. You can't hear it anymore. Someone might be right next to you shouting, you don't even notice because you're doing your shit. And then that goes into your whole life, and then your whole life becomes kind of magical. The other aspect is the synchronicities thing, which is very important, which is paying attention to synchronicities and using them as signposts, which is very, very important. And the more of that you do, the more you notice, the more you see, and the more you see, the more magical things become, because the more you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're deeper into the zone, and you're on your path. Malcolm X used to say, when you see synchronicities, that means you're walking with Allah. That was his thing. Grant Morrison, who I mentioned earlier, he said the first steps to becoming a chaos magician are to notice those synchronicities and pay attention to them. And then the more of them you see, the more you'll get, and so on and so forth. I use them like signposts. So the idea is you keep moving like a fucking shark. You do not stop. And you use those synchronicities as signposts to stop yourself from having to overthink things and question things. And I found that it works. Feels like it works.
Yeah. So head down with the antenna up.
Exactly that, baby.
Yeah. I really like that. Do you have moments where like that is faltering, or do you just find that every minute is accounted for, and you're just, once you're in it, you've been able to stay in it? Or are there times where you're not feeling it, you have a day that's off, and if so, how do you get that back on track?
No, I've never had, no. No, sometimes sometimes you're not as disciplined as you should be, and there's always areas to improve in, and sometimes your emotional regulation might go off, and you might get angered by something, or nearly get in a fight with a guy with a leaf blower down by the coffee shop like I did yesterday. And there's always, it's like, you ever, those Mr. Muscle magic things?
I don't. You got one?
Yeah. These things, they're like a miracle. They're like a miracle.
Oh, yeah.
And they just clean anything white. But the problem is, the second you do that, everything else looks goddamn filthy. You know what I mean? And it's like that, you just like, all right, you fix one thing and then suddenly that shows up everything else for the problematic, for how that is. And every level you go down, it's like the onion, there's another level. There's always another level. There's no plateau.
Mm.
You know, you'll die, and then that would be that. And then there's a whole other adventure. Like that's another whole other level. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
constant refining is constant refining, and there's so you'll think you've sorted something, but in sorting that will create a new thing for you to have to sort and a new level for you to have to deal with, and so on and so forth. But no, there's no, you know, as far as like unzone issues that people have when they're not in the zone, like creative block and things not coming out how you want them to, or not knowing what to do, or being frustrated, or whatever it is, artistically or creatively. Like since I've been doing this thing, it's just been just a constant sort of acceleration of glory and wonder, you know. And as was the idea, every project improves on the previous and in some shape or form does better, and the thing just grows and grows and grows, and don't seem to be approaching any kind of upper limit. And I don't think there is one, you know.
Start from yourself and work outward, and it just keeps rippling to higher and higher levels.
That's right, baby. Life works from the inside out.
How do you select the people that what do you consider them? Collaborators? What do you refer to them as?
I don't know. I don't think about it too much. The times call forth the speaker.
Yeah.
You know, and I just always, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine. He used to manage me when he was one of the people who employed me as a music journalist earlier on. And he said I was always good at spotting trends and spotting the future and spot emerging music trends or artists or whatever it is. And he was like, you really, you know, you would, and he was like, and you're still doing it. You did it with, say, Jordan Peterson. Like he's huge. Like, you know, the first I heard of him was on one of your songs. Da, 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 da. But like, so again, it's like part of that paying attention to culture thing. It's part of that DJ thing of reading the room. It's like, you just are not overthinking it. It's just like for the times and for what I'm trying to build as far as the wisdom integration. It's like certain people have got certain keys, you know. So that guy's got one key and he's got one way of looking at things, and that guy's got another thing, that person's got another thing, and okay, now we need to go 2,000 years into the past and get Marcus Aurelius up in this thing because that guy got a bunch of keys, and so on and so forth. So I don't really overthink. It's just like, you know, each person is looking at the sphere from a different side of the room. It's the same sphere, you know, but between, you know, Watts and Goggins and Jocko and all these people, like you get the fullness of the view, which is that thing Alan Watts was saying in the most recent album. You know, what we need is fullness of the view. And that's the thing a lot of people miss, particularly now, because everyone's like getting all myopic and peering through their little keyhole in their corner of the bubble or whatever the frick. You know what I mean? And yeah.
How do you? I know we're coming up on time. You have time for a couple more questions?
Sure.
Awesome. So how do you stay connected with your audience? I was on your, what do you call them, a live stream or a set last night, the one you were doing, but what do you do to stay in touch with your audience and to get music out to them besides just putting it out on the platforms?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, yeah, like on a marketing or whatever level, you know, yeah, I, you know, don't have record label or agents or any of that infrastructure or anything. My whole amazing idea was, hey, I'll just be really good and just be consistent and just keep dropping greatness, and word of mouth will spread it, and it will just, and if you just keep moving and keep being great and keep being consistent, just keep showing up, new music every Friday, live streams every day now since Tom Hanks, shouts out to, you know, Tom Hanks, you know, started doing a live stream every day. I was like, why wasn't I doing this before? And now I do 2 a day, you know, for people on the other side of the planet. That was one of the other aspects of doing that morning show, is like, I do the evening show at 6 p.m. every day, but it's like, you know, if you're in Sweden, you're asleep, you know, so I do one in the morning for those people. You know,
those are long shows. How long are they? Like 3 hours or so?
The morning one is 1 hour, 30 minutes. The evening one is 2 hours, 30 minutes usually. Sometimes it goes a bit longer.
Yeah.
But then each of those things, it's like each one of those will be listened to thousands of times between the podcast and the live thing and the replay and all that. And, it's so much material. If you're coming into this world and you're new, it's like, shit, there's all this, you don't even know. People constantly every day, they're like, oh, could you do a Hunter S. Thompson? I actually already did. And they're like, oh shit, didn't even know that existed. So doing those streams is a good way of like getting to play the music, explore different styles and play different kinds of music and stuff and just keep those powers moving and all that. But yeah, it's the modern internet is no longer like one country. It's like lots of little ones. It's a bit like Los Angeles. It's like if you live in Burbank, you don't necessarily ever go down to downtown Los Angeles, It's like a bunch of interconnected lily pads and some people just stay on that one lily pad. So you kind of have to go to those lily pads with your lemonade stand, with your meaning stand. So you got to make sure your shit is on Spotify and you got something going on YouTube that works for the YouTube people, and you're doing something in, on Twitter that's for the Twitter people that's specific to that, and you're putting things on Instagram that works for them, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And you've only got so much time and so much power, so you have to kind of just make, some places maybe you can't do. Just focus on what you can do and do it well and do it for those audiences, because it's different people, it's different vibes, it's different customs, So as far as it's just trying to make sure making sure, pay attention to your language. You know what I mean?
Be precise in your speech.
Be precise in your speech. Don't be putting no limits in words in your vocab. Go isolate the places and put stuff in the places that works in those places. I just try and make sure the music's as easy for people to listen to, access, and share as possible. And then when people find it, it's one of these things, Naval said, find how to get rich, find something that people want, but do not yet know how to get, and scale that thing, and people don't know. Most people don't know Meaningwave exists, but they wish it existed. And when they find it, they're super, super excited. And they tell all their homies and they ring their mom. And they go, damn, mom, Meaningwave exists. She's like, what? She's like, no, it does. Like, look. And then it grows and it grows and it grows, and you just keep it moving, baby.
Yeah, I love that Naval record. That was really great. I've been a big fan of his for a long time, and exactly that. It was having it in that album format. I'm like, perfect. All of the ideas that he put out on that Twitter stream and on that podcast, and it just condensed down. Really, really cool.
Well, that's right. His genius is taking complex ideas and condensing them. Mm-hmm. He takes the lump of coal and turns it into a diamond that is a tweet. But tweets only exist on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And like, even on Twitter, they're in the stream. It's like a stick going under the bridge, and then they're gone. You can only pin one tweet. Mm-hmm. Or one tweet thread, and I was, as soon as I saw that tweet thread, I was like, this needs to become an album. And I hit him up. I was like, would you consider like reading these so I could turn them into an album? Mm-hmm. And he said yes. And I think that's what led him to making the podcast.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that came first. Interesting.
Podcasts at that point, he wasn't doing audio. He'd done like one Periscope. No, he hadn't done the Periscope. He'd done a Periscope, and I hit him up. I was like, yo, I'd love to turn this into a record, And he said, oh, I was thinking of getting a microphone, so I'll get a microphone and maybe I'll read it. And then a couple of weeks later, he did a Periscope, and then he started doing a podcast and And then I did the album, and part 2's coming this year.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's a great gift.
I
appreciate that.
That was the first film, was that album. That was
only... interesting. So when's that coming out? Later in the year, you said? I can't wait. So what is I guess the last question, what is your ultimate goal with Meaningwave? Do you want it to be a genre that there are other people making music like this? Is it you just want to keep doing this forever? How do you see it? What's your hope for it?
My intention is to integrate the necessary wisdom of the ages into epic records, and for those to reach all the people who will benefit from them, which is a lot of people. So there's a lot to do. So it's a lot of wisdom to integrate and a lot of people to reach. And that's a pretty epic adventure and mission. And also, because it's just very early days in this, I've only been doing it like deliberately for a few years. So I'm still kind of refining the process and refining the methods and the technology and stuff. Doing the live streams, I'll be playing older records and I'm like, damn, I missed a melody there. if I'd just added an extra layer of a backing vocal on that thing, that would have made that line way catchier. It would have made it way stickier, you know? So just stuff like that. So yeah, get it as good as it can possibly be. Bring in as much of the knowledge and wisdom and usefulness as possible, and get it to as many people as possible in this lifetime. Achieve maximum epicness, you know, and usefulness. Achieve maximum usefulness.
I think that's a great one to end on. I think you have done absolutely that so far, at least for me, as far as I can say. And yeah, I hope there's a lot more to come, because it's been really, really valuable in my life, and I'm sure in a lot of other people. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to come on and chat. This was really fun.
Appreciate you, brother. I'm grateful to have been of use in your existence.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Akira. Thank you, and have a safe trip to Austin, and good luck with all your other projects.
Thank you, brother.
Awesome, man. All right, take care.
All right,
Bye-bye.